Mr. Herman, in your witness testimony, you described the decline of the U.S. domestic industrial capacity and workforce, both defense and non-defense. Over the decades, you described the defense industrial base workforce as neglected in terms of national security strategy. Could you elaborate on the neglect and provide the recommendations you may have on how to incorporate workforce as part of our national strategy? And this may be as comprehensive as contracting versus appropriations versus all the inefficiencies that we as Congress are a big part of. How could we streamline that and make it better?
Hit my button. I think it's an excellent question. It's one that I've been spending a good deal of my time more and more. In fact, right now I'm heading up a commission on workforce development for the space industry, which I think has enormous implications for not only for our future economy, but also for future national security issues. And I think that the challenge that we face with regard to workforce, which, by the way, we faced in World War II as well. You know, there were a lot more plants and shipyards opening during World War II than there were workers available. And this became a major problem of how to recruit and how to train and how to retain workers in that environment, particularly when you had a free market wage environment where if you were working in a defense plant in Detroit and you heard that in the Kaiser shipyards they were paying a lot more, plus you had health benefits, you could just pack up and go. There was no one who was going to say, no, you have to stay and keep working on what you've been doing here with regard to producing tank treads or whatever else came up. So you've got the training and development, you've got workforce, you've got education issues, which we always keep coming back to, the question about K-12 and STEM education and the constant shortfall that we have in terms of both development of skill sets, but also in updating the curriculum in those areas here. We've been talking about this for decades, and yet the trend is still downhill. So what I'm hoping we'll be able to do with the work that we're doing on the Space Workforce Commission at Hudson is to come up with some answers, to come up with a paradigm about ways in which we can expand workforce, in ways that it can be a paradigm for talking about it with the rest of the defense industrial base, but then also for our own manufacturing economy as a whole. But I think part of the issue has been that this has always been an afterthought, particularly on the part of military planners and strategists. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. I think part of it is, if you like, I'm going to say this, I think part of it too is a class issue. I think there has always been a reluctance to think about the blue-collar aspects of our defense industrial base, of our manufacturing base as a whole, and to think about it as something which will always be there when it's needed, instead of something that needs to be revivified and has to be taken a new direction for the 21st century. And that includes, of course, our work with foreign countries and with foreign workers as well. And part of my vision for an arsenal of democracies will be to think about the issue of workforce and the ways in which U.S. workers from our leading democracies can, in fact, find a way to work together and to become part of a productive whole with those systems which are going to be most important to the future of our national defense.
Thank you. In regards, I only have a short amount of time, but Mr. I hope I don't mispronounce your name, Krpenovich?
Close.
Good. As far as lessons learned from the war in Ukraine with Russia and innovating for the future, do you think it's more important to focus on innovations and technologies versus tactics and surge capabilities when we're talking about not just any war, but looking into the future for lessons learned?
I think the answer is both. I think we need to look at how both sides are using technologies. There's, of course, a lot of discussion about the use of drones in that environment and how they've used them. I think in terms of operations, though, you look at what the Russians have done in particular recently in terms of defenses. And a lot of these defenses are very formidable against even modern weapons. And they aren't especially sophisticated when you just put in enormous numbers of landmines to stop someone. So a strong lessons, and that's been a characteristic of military innovation over time. After World War I, the Germans lost, and they spent several years looking at what went wrong, both from a technological perspective and an operational perspective.
If I may say something quickly about, can I?
Go for it.
About the Russian industrial base, defense industrial base. You know, what is amazing is that as an industrial base, it's probably one of the least innovative of the major powers. It has been one which is really dependent upon export sales in order to sustain itself. And yet what's interesting is that you have a very uninnovative defensive base, which has managed to sustain this war effort for over these last 2 years. I mean, it's an incredible story of how being able to outlast your enemy and outproduce them, even when your resources there aren't really a cutting edge and aren't really sort of moving the military technology paradigm forward.